This is going to be the seated leg curl. This machine looks a little different than ones that are at most gyms, but for the most part, it functions very similarly. Now you're going to have a bar to lock your legs down into place. You have one bar down here for you to put your feet and legs up on top of. And from there, you just need to make sure that you're set in the right position. So I'm going to show a couple different ways that we can manipulate what we're doing to change the exercise a little bit. But as far as standard goes, I want to make sure that whenever I put my legs up here, that it's really the very bottom of my calf and maybe the top of my Achilles tendon that's resting here. I want to make sure that my knee lines up right here. This point's called a pivot point, and most places are going to have some sort of marker like a circle or a dot. And in my case, I just have a bolt right here. This is where the joint is working around, so this is going to be the most comfortable, ergonomic way of using it. Now, on a seated leg curl versus a lying leg curl, the seated does put you into a much greater stretch because we're stretching the hamstrings from the hips and from the knees. Both have their pros and cons, but for the most part, I like to go to the seated leg curl. Now you can see that this adjusts, so I'm already set in my ankle position. From here, I'm going to make sure that my knee lines up, so I'm just a little too far back. I need to come up some. So now my knee is going to be right across, so it just draws a straight line across where my knees are to that pivot point. And then you're going to take your bar and you're going to lock down. Now, for the most part, you just want this bar to be snug. That may change depending on how we change this exercise. Now, before I go, I want to make sure that I have as good a posture as I can manage, because as I lift my chest, I'm going to pull my pelvis into a slightly different alignment to pull my hamstrings into a greater stretch. If your low back is really sensitive, you need to make sure that you are tightening and staying rounded forward. And if you can swing having a little bit more stretch on your hamstrings, I would recommend lifting your chest. All it does is change how far you're going to be stretching your hamstrings on each rep. Now, as I go through, I'm going to make sure that the weight comes really close to tapping down. So if you're at a gym and you have a weight stack, you want to make sure you get really, really close without quite touching, and that I feel a stretch at the end of my reps. So as I'm going through, you might notice I keep my toes up. This just lets me use the top portion of my calves a little bit more. I can point down, and I'm going to have a much greater isolation through my hamstrings. And I may even feel like my foot is cramping right now, so you might even feel your feet work a little bit more. But for the most part, toes up means I'm going to incorporate a little bit of calves, maybe be a little bit stronger there. If I go toes down, I'm going to isolate my hamstrings much better. Either way, you just want to make sure that you're consistent with how you do it. I can also do things like turning my toes in or squeezing my thighs together to get the more medial portion of my hamstring, so more toward my center line. This works really well for helping to reinforce this medial portion of your knee. This is where most people are weak. Or you can even flare out to hit more the external portions of your hamstrings. Now, my recommendation is whatever your body decides it's going to start doing when you get tired and what it automatically wants to do, you need to do the opposite of that. So if you naturally find yourself rolling your feet out here, you probably need to try to make sure you're keeping a parallel or slightly pigeon-toed version of this. That way you can work on what is weak, because your body's going to fall back on its stronger position. Now, as far as changing this exercise for a different variation, what I can do is I can lean forward. In here, this is going to pull my hamstrings much tighter. That way I have a much greater stretch on it. I do want to make sure I'm keeping my abs tight, and that as I pull through, I still get my stretch at the top, and my lower back is not trying to arch while I'm doing this. It'll be very important that you keep your abs tight on this. That way your low back doesn't get yanked on or pulled on or create other potential problems. The next thing that we can do is we can lift the guard up just a little bit, and I can actually scoop myself forward past that pivot point. And as I pull in, I can get a much deeper squeeze now. In this machine's case, it's because the seat is no longer in the way. But sometimes this may work well for other machines where the seat's not a problem, but you want to get a deeper contraction. much tighter squeeze here. Or I can do this as well. I can completely float this and allow my knees to come up and rest. So that way as I pull through, I'm getting that deep contraction as well. But now I'm not being able to leverage off of this bar here. These are all really good ways to change up how the exercise treats your hamstrings. The big thing is that you just stay consistent on what you use and progress it from there.